Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to trace the invisible lines that connect a power struggle between nations all the way down to, say, the price of an apple in your local market. We're going to explore how these massive global changes ripple downwards to affect our lives, our communities. So let's dive right in.
Does it ever feel like the world is just getting more and more complicated? You hear a news story about a trade deal, right? Then another about a protest, then something about a cultural festival, and it can all feel like this random flood of information. But what if it's not random at all? Today, we're going to connect those dots. We're going to show you how these events are often part of the very same story. And that story? Well, it really begins at the very top, with the big picture. We're talking about a fundamental shift in the New World Order. Seriously, the way power is structured across the globe has changed, and we're all living in a completely new era.
For a good few decades, things were pretty simple, relatively speaking. The world had one dominant superpower. But that period, what experts call the unipolar moment, is officially over. So what's replaced it? And this is where we hit the central paradox of our time. On one hand, the world's structure is what you'd call multipolar. There are many centers of influence. Think Europe, India, Brazil, you name it. But when you look at the raw power dynamics, it's becoming more and more bipolar, really revolving around this intense competition between the US and China.
This is where it gets really complex and interesting because you have all these other key players in the mix. You've got Russia acting as a swing power that can tip the scales one way or the other. You have Europe, which is being pushed by the US to take on more responsibility. And then you have a whole bunch of middle powers who are smartly hedging their bets. They're refusing to pick a side because they want to maintain their own autonomy. The crucial thing to get here is that this isn't some new Cold War with rigid blocks. No, it's a much more fluid, much more unpredictable global game.
Okay, so with all these competing interests in such a fluid system, how do nations even try to agree on a set of rules? Well, one of the biggest battlegrounds for establishing trust and order in this new era is the global fight against corruption.
And in this massive global fight, there is one and only one instrument that truly matters on a universal scale.
And this is it, the UN Convention Against Corruption, or UNCAC for short. Now, this isn't just some suggestion or a friendly guideline. It is the only legally binding treaty that the entire world has for fighting corruption. It is the official rulebook.
And its scope is absolutely huge. It's designed to tackle everything from bribery in government to fraud in the private sector. So when these rules get debated and enforced, like they were at a major conference in Doha recently, it directly impacts how countries manage their money and regulate their economies. And believe me, this high-level effort to create order has very real on-the-ground consequences.
So, how do these big-picture power shifts and global rules actually feel on the ground? Well, when global trade policies shift or environmental rules get debated, it creates this intense friction at the local level. And that leads to real-world battles with some very, very high stakes.
To really see what I mean, we're going to zoom right into India. Because there, we can see these forces playing out in two very different local conflicts, one over a river and one over a piece of fruit.
So here we go. Two different fronts. On one side, you've got an environmental battle on the Dasan River where a permit for sand mining got canceled. That decision is tied directly to national regulations. And on the other, a trade battle in Himachal Pradesh where apple farmers are suddenly facing a huge change in international trade policy. Let's tune in on those farmers to really see the human impact of these global forces.
Okay, just imagine you're an apple grower. For years, there's been a 50% import tax on foreign apples, which, help keep your prices competitive. Then, all of a sudden, that tax gets slashed in half, down to 25%. A flood of cheaper international apples is now heading straight for your market.
This isn't just some abstract number on a spreadsheet. For the farmers in Himachal Pradesh, who grow about a quarter of all of India's apples, this could mean a price crash and the loss of their entire livelihood. And this is all happening on top of the other pressures they're already dealing with. Climate change, rising costs, labor shortages, it's a perfect storm. A local consequence of a global decision.
So, when the world around you is shifting like this, geopolitically, economically, even environmentally, what do you hold on to? Well, for many, the answer is culture, the very bedrock of identity.
We see a really powerful example of this in Jamshedpur, with what one report called a major cultural gathering of the Santal community. See, in the face of all this uncertainty and a world that feels kind of chaotic, communities often turn inward to reinforce the very things that make them who they are.
So the Santal community, they came together for their 22nd Parsi Maha gathering. And this wasn't just any meeting.
They were celebrating the 100th anniversary of their unique writing system, the Old Cheeky Script. I mean, what a profound statement of cultural preservation and pride in a world that is changing so fast.
All right, let's put all these pieces together. What we've seen is a cascade, right? A clear flow from the huge global stage down to the deeply personal. It all starts with the end of one world order and the messy rise of a new, way more complex geopolitical landscape. That chaos forces nations to try and create global rule books, like that UN Convention Against Corruption, just to try and manage the whole system. And then those high-level rules get translated into national policies that create real-world friction, sparking these local fights over everything from riverbeds to the price of apples. And finally, all of this pressure cascades all the way down to us, pushing communities to find stability and meaning by grabbing hold of the very core of their cultural identity. Which really leaves us with a final question to chew on. As the lines between the global and the local keep getting blurrier, what are the things, the rules, the resources, the cultures that truly hold us all together? It's something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in.